They used ancient sailing to conquer space. The pelagic drift shuddered. Not the gentle vibration of standard thrust. This was a bone-deep tremor that rattled teeth and made the hull sing like a struck bell. Ivo Marquant's fingers danced across the helm console, reading the magnetic flux lines through haptic feedback gloves that translated invisible forces into pressure and heat. His eyes stayed fixed on the viewport, where the Maelstrom Tresses writhed, a three-dimensional labyrinth of plasma storms stretching across 40,000 kilometers of what used to be empty space. "Magnetotail bearing 273, he muttered, more to himself than the bridge crew. "Bow shock forming at, there." A wall of compressed particles bloomed violet-white ahead, beautiful and lethal. "Helmsman, you're drifting into the shear zone," Commander Yashida's voice cracked across the bridge. "Pull us back to the convoy route." Ivo didn't respond. His jaw worked as he calculated angles that had nothing to do with the nav computer's recommendations. The machine wanted them to burn hard, punch through the interference, rejoin the main fleet by brute force. But Ivo had spent 15 years studying ocean currents in the Mariana Trench before the war, and he recognized patterns the algorithms couldn't see. "Belay that order," Captain Oren said quietly. The Torvaldi woman stood barely a meter tall, her chitinous exoskeleton gleaming under the emergency lighting. "Let him work." The drift rolled 30 degrees to port. Ivo felt the magnetotail catch them, a river of charged particles flowing perpendicular to their previous heading. The ship accelerated without burning fuel, riding the invisible current like a sailboat catching wind. "Flux density increasing," the sensor officer called out. "We're at 400 nanotesla and climbing." "Good." Ivo's hands moved faster now, making micro-adjustments. "We want 550, right at the edge where the field lines compress." "That'll fry our sensors." "Only if we stay too long." The viewport filled with light. Plasma streamers lashed past, each one carrying enough energy to vaporize an unshielded hull. But Ivo threaded them through gaps that appeared and vanished in seconds, reading the storm's rhythm like a sailor reading swells. Behind them, the convoy wasn't so lucky. The Merchant's Hope, a Krell bulk hauler, tried to follow the nav computer's prescribed route. Ivo watched its icon on the tactical display as it burned hard, fighting the magnetotail instead of using it. The ship made it 300 meters before a plasma streamer caught its port quarter. The icon flickered, died. 1,700 souls, gone. "Multiple ships breaking formation," Yashida reported, her voice tight. "The Krell are scattering, so are the Vex frigates." "They're panicking," Captain Oren said. "Helmsman, can we guide them?" Ivo's teeth ground together. "Not if they won't listen. The Krell think they can muscle through anything. The Vex trust their computers more than their instincts. And humans. We learned to sail before we learned to fly." Ivo pulled up a secondary display, overlaying historical data from Earth's oceans onto the plasma storm structure. "Look at this. The magnetotail flows like the Kuroshio current. These bow shocks, they're standing waves just like the ones off the Columbia River bar. And these plasma streamers." He trailed off, fingers flying across the controls. "What about the streamers?" Oren pressed. "They're rip currents. You don't fight a rip current. You swim parallel until you're clear, then angle back." The drift banked hard, sliding sideways through a gap between two converging plasma walls. The hull temperature spiked to 800 degrees Celsius. Alarms screamed. Then they were through, emerging into a pocket of relative calm, a magnetic eddy where the field lines twisted back on themselves, creating a stable zone. "All stop," Ivo ordered. "Let's see who else makes it." They waited. The storm raged around their bubble of safety, a kaleidoscope of violet, crimson, and electric blue. Ivo's hands never left the controls, feeling the eddy's boundaries through the haptic gloves. It was shrinking. They had maybe 10 minutes before the pocket collapsed. 3 ships emerged from the chaos. The salted wound, a human destroyer. The clicking stones, a Torvaldi science vessel. And surprisingly, a Vex cruiser, the geometric certainty, its hull scorched but intact. "Hail them," Oren commanded. The comm channels crackled with interference, but voices cut through. Captain Wren of the Salted Wound spoke first, his gravelly voice unmistakable. "Marquant, you beautiful bastard. How'd you know that pocket was here?" "I didn't, I felt it." "Felt it?" That was the Vex captain, its translated voice flat and skeptical. "Explain your methodology." "Can't. It's like asking how you know when a wave's about to break. You just know." Silence. Then the Vex captain spoke again. "Unacceptable. Navigation requires precision, not intuition." "Your precision just killed half the convoy," Ivo shot back. "My intuition got us here alive." "Enough." Captain Oren's voice carried authority despite her small stature. "We have 9 minutes before this pocket collapses. Helmsman, can you get us through the rest of the tresses?" Ivo pulled up the long-range scans, what little the interference allowed. The Maelstrom Tresses stretched for another 200,000 kilometers, a maze with no clear path. But there, he saw it, a pattern in the chaos. "The bow shocks are moving," he said slowly. "They're not random, they're breathing like tides." "Tides require gravitational bodies," the Vex captain objected. "These are magnetic tides. The field lines are anchored to something massive, probably a neutron star fragment caught in the storm's core. They oscillate on a 43-minute cycle." "How can you possibly know that?" "Because I've been watching them for the last 6 minutes and I can see the pattern repeating." Ivo's fingers drummed against the console. "If we time it right, we can ride the bow shocks like a surfer riding a wave train. Each one will carry us deeper into the tresses, and if we catch the last one at peak amplitude, we'll shoot out the other side," Captain Wren finished. "Marquant, that's insane." "It's sailing. It's suicide. It's our only chance." Ivo turned to face Captain Oren. "The Krell blockade is waiting outside the tresses. They know the standard exit vectors, but if we come out riding a bow shock at relativistic speeds, we'll blow past them before they can react." Oren's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. "And if your timing is off, we'll be crushed between converging plasma walls, or we'll hit a magnetotail shear and get torn apart, or we'll miss the exit vector and end up deeper in the storm with no way out. Those are terrible odds." "Better than the alternative." Ivo gestured at the tactical display. "The Krell have 6 dreadnoughts and 20 cruisers waiting for us. We have 3 combat-capable ships and a science vessel. We can't fight them. We can't outrun them, but we can outsail them." The pocket shuddered. 7 minutes left. "All ships," Oren broadcast, "prepare to follow the pelagic drift's lead. Helmsman Marquant will guide us through. Disable your nav computers and switch to manual control." "Captain, I must protest," the Vex began. "Protest noted and overruled. Either trust the human or die here. Your choice." Ivo didn't wait for their response. He was already plotting the course, not with numbers but with instinct honed by years of reading water and wind. The first bow shock would arrive in 4 minutes. They needed to be positioned exactly right to catch it. "All ships form up on my stern. Tight formation, no more than 50 meters separation." "That's dangerously close," Yashida warned. "It has to be. We're going to draft off each other, reduce the magnetic drag. Same principle as geese flying in formation." The ships maneuvered into position. Ivo watched the chronometer count down. 3 minutes. 2. The bow shock was building, a wall of compressed particles racing toward them at a significant fraction of light speed. 1 minute. "Here it comes," Ivo whispered. "Hold steady." The bow shock hit like a tsunami. The drift lurched forward, accelerating so hard that Ivo's vision grayed at the edges. But he'd angled them perfectly. They weren't fighting the shock. They were riding it, letting it carry them forward while he made tiny adjustments to keep them in the sweet spot where the magnetic pressure was strongest. Behind them, the other ships followed. The salted wound held formation perfectly. The clicking stones wobbled but recovered. The geometric certainty fell behind, its computer-assisted controls too slow to react to the rapid changes. "Vex ship is losing ground," Yashida reported. "Tell them to shut down their automation completely, full manual." A pause, then, "They're complying." The Vex cruiser surged forward, suddenly graceful. Apparently, even logic-driven species could learn to trust their instincts when survival demanded it. The first bow shock carried them 30,000 kilometers before it began to dissipate. Ivo was already looking ahead, finding the next one. There, a compression wave forming along a magnetotail boundary. They had 18 seconds to position themselves. "Hard to starboard, all ships match my heading." They banked as one, a school of fish moving in perfect synchronization. The second bow shock caught them, even stronger than the first. The hull temperature spiked to 1200 degrees. The shields screamed, but they held. Third shock, fourth, fifth. Ivo lost track of time. His world narrowed to the haptic feedback in his gloves, the patterns in the plasma, the rhythm of the magnetic tides. He was back in the submersible, 3 kilometers down in the Mariana Trench, reading the deep currents that no instrument could fully measure. He was on his grandfather's fishing boat, learning to feel the ocean's moods through the deck beneath his feet. He was home. "Final shock approaching," he heard himself say. "This one's going to be rough. Divert all power to forward shields." "That'll leave our sterns exposed," Wren protested. "We won't need them. We're not going back." The last bow shock was a monster, a compression wave so powerful it bent space itself, creating gravitational eddies that pulled at the ships like whirlpools. Ivo aimed straight for its heart. "Marquant, you're going to kill us all," Yashida screamed. "Trust me." The shock hit. The drift accelerated to 0.3 light speed in under 2 seconds. The hull shrieked. Bulkheads buckled. But Ivo had positioned them perfectly. They were riding the shock's leading edge, where the magnetic pressure was strongest and most stable. The Maelstrom Tresses fell away behind them. Ahead, clear space beckoned. And between them and freedom, the Krell blockade. "Contacts," Yashida's voice was hoarse. 6 dreadnoughts bearing 090, they're powering weapons." "Too slow," Ivo said. He was grinning now, a wild expression that made him look slightly unhinged. "We're moving too fast, they can't track us." He was right. The Krell ships tried to intercept, but the convoy blew past them at relativistic speeds, riding the bow shock's momentum. By the time the Krell adjusted their firing solutions, the humans and their allies were already gone, vanishing into the darkness beyond. The pelagic drift limped into the refuge, a hollowed-out asteroid that served as the rebellion's primary staging base. Ivo's hands shook as he guided them through the docking sequence. Adrenaline crash, combined with 36 hours without sleep. "Smooth sailing, helmsman," Captain Oren said quietly. "Get some rest." But rest would have to wait. The moment they docked, Ivo was summoned to the command center, a cavernous space carved from the asteroid's core, filled with holographic displays and arguing officers from a dozen species. Admiral Kess, a grizzled human with more scars than skin, stood at the center of the chaos. "Marquant, get over here." Ivo threaded through the crowd. Up close, Kess looked even worse, one eye replaced with a crude cybernetic, his left arm ending in a mechanical prosthetic that clicked and whirred with every movement. "You just did the impossible," Kess said without preamble. "Took 4 ships through the Maelstrom Tresses and past a Krell blockade. How?" "I treated it like sailing." "Elaborate." Ivo pulled up a holographic display, overlaying Earth's ocean currents onto the Tresses' magnetic structure. "Look, the magnetotails flow like the Kuroshio current, fast, powerful, predictable if you know what to look for. The bow shocks are standing waves. The plasma streamers are rip currents. Once I recognized the patterns, navigation became intuitive. A Krell officer, massive, four-armed, with skin like granite, pushed forward. Intuitive. Navigation requires precision calculations, not guesswork. It's not guesswork, it's pattern recognition. Humans have been doing it for thousands of years. On water, the Krell rumbled, not in space. The principles are the same. Fluid dynamics, whether you're talking about water or plasma or magnetic fields. The math is identical. Show me. Ivo spent the next hour explaining, using examples from Earth's maritime history. He talked about Polynesian navigators who crossed the Pacific using only wave patterns and star positions. He described how clipper ship captains used trade winds to shave weeks off their voyages. He explained the mathematics of sailing, how to calculate optimal angles, how to read weather patterns, how to feel the subtle shifts in current and wind that meant the difference between life and death. The Krell officer listened, his four arms crossed skeptically, but gradually his posture shifted. These, saltwater standards, they could be adapted for space navigation. They already have been, I just proved it. Admiral Kess leaned forward. Could you teach this to other helmsmen? Maybe. It's not just about the math. It's about developing the instinct, the feel for it. That takes time. We don't have time. Kess gestured at the tactical display, where red icons marked Krell positions throughout the sector. The enemy controls every major transit route. They have superior numbers, superior firepower. Our only advantage is mobility, and they're strangling that. But if we could navigate through regions they consider impassable, we could hit them where they're not expecting, Ivo finished. Guerrilla warfare on a stellar scale. Exactly. But I need more than one helmsman who can pull off miracles. I need a system, a training program, standards that any competent navigator can learn. Ivo thought about it. The feel for sailing was intuitive, yes, but it was built on a foundation of solid principles, principles that could be taught. Give me a week, he said, and access to your best navigators. I'll develop a curriculum. You have 3 days. That's not enough. 3 days, Kess repeated. Because in 4 days we're launching an assault on the Krell supply depot at Theta Carinae. It's protected by the Crimson Veil, a plasma storm even worse than the Maelstrom Tresses. If your saltwater standards work, we can slip through the veil and hit the depot before they know we're there. If they don't work. He didn't need to finish. They all knew what failure meant. Ivo nodded slowly. 3 days. I'll need a simulator, and I'll need it configured to my specifications. Done. Anything else? Coffee, lots of coffee. 72 hours later, Ivo stood in the simulator control room, watching 12 navigators from 6 different species struggle with the training scenarios he designed. Most were failing spectacularly. No, no, no. He slammed his hand on the console. You're fighting the current. Stop trying to force your way through and let it carry you. On the screen, a simulated ship piloted by a young Torvaldi named Kessick spun out of control, caught between 2 converging magnetotails. The simulation ended with a harsh red failure message. Kessick emerged from the simulator pod, her carapace dulled with frustration. I don't understand. The calculations were perfect. Forget the calculations. What did you feel? Feel? I felt nothing. It's a simulation. Wrong. Ivo pulled her back to the console, bringing up a replay of her run. Here, right here, you see how the magnetic flux density spiked. That's the current shifting. You should have felt that through the haptic feedback. I did feel it, a pressure increase in my left glove. And what did you do? I compensated by adjusting the heading 2 degrees to starboard. Why 2 degrees? Because that's what the formula indicated. Ivo resisted the urge to throw something. The formula is a guideline, not a law. You felt the pressure increase. Your instinct should have told you to turn harder, to really lean into it, but you second-guessed yourself and went with the numbers. Numbers don't lie. No, but they're always a step behind reality. By the time you've calculated the perfect response, the situation has already changed. You need to trust your gut. Keswick's mandibles clicked in what Ivo had learned was the Torvaldi equivalent of a skeptical frown. My gut is designed for digesting food, not navigating plasma storms. Despite everything, Ivo laughed. Fair point, but you know what I mean. The part of your brain that processes patterns faster than conscious thought. The part that kept your ancestors alive when a predator was stalking them. That's what you need to tap into. He spent the next hour working with her one-on-one, forcing her to make decisions faster than she could calculate. Gradually, something shifted. Her movements became more fluid, more instinctive. She started anticipating the simulation's challenges instead of reacting to them. Better, Ivo said when she completed a run without crashing. Not good, but better. High praise, Keswick said dryly. You'll get higher praise when you can do it in your sleep, again. By the end of the third day, 5 of the 12 navigators had achieved what Ivo considered minimum competency. Not great odds, but better than nothing. Admiral Kess reviewed their performance records with a grim expression. 5 out of 12. That's a 42% success rate. It's better than 0%, which is what you had before. It's not good enough. We're taking 20 ships into the Crimson Veil, if only 42% make it through. Then we'll have 8 or 9 ships instead of 20, still better than trying to fight through the Krell defenses conventionally. Ivo leaned back in his chair, exhaustion making his bones ache. Besides, I'll be leading the formation. The others just need to follow my lead and apply the principles when they get separated. You're assuming you'll survive to lead them. I'm assuming I'm too stubborn to die. So far, that's worked out. Kess almost smiled. You remind me of someone I used to know, another sailor who thought he could navigate anything. What happened to him? He tried to sail through a black hole's accretion disk. Didn't make it. I'll try to avoid black holes then. See that you do. We need you alive, Marquant. You're the only one who really understands this saltwater standard nonsense. It's not nonsense, it's science. It's instinct dressed up as science, but if it works I don't care what you call it. Kess stood, his mechanical arm whirring. Fleet departs in 6 hours, get some sleep. I'll sleep when I'm dead. That might be sooner than you think. The Crimson Veil earned its name. Where the Maelstrom Tresses had been violet and blue, the veil was a roiling mass of red and orange plasma, shot through with veins of yellow-white that pulsed like a living thing's arteries. Flux density is off the charts, Yashida reported from the sensor station. We're reading 1200 nanotesla at the periphery. It'll be 3 times that inside. Good, Ivo said. Strong currents are predictable currents. The fleet formed up behind the pelagic drift, 20 ships ranging from nimble frigates to lumbering cargo haulers. Ivo had argued against bringing the haulers, but Kess insisted they needed the supplies for the assault on the depot. All ships, listen carefully, Ivo broadcast. The Veil operates on different principles than the Tresses. The magnetotails here are braided multiple currents flowing in parallel, sometimes in opposite directions. You need to pick one and commit to it. Don't try to switch between them or you'll get caught in the shear. How do we know which current to pick? Someone asked. You feel for the strongest one. It'll pull at your ship like a riptide. Don't fight it, lean into it. That's not very specific, the Vex captain of the Geometric Certainty observed. It's as specific as I can make it. This isn't paint by numbers' navigation. You need to adapt in real time. Insufficient data for optimal decision-making. Then make suboptimal decisions and adjust as you go. Welcome to sailing. The fleet entered the Veil. Immediately, the drift was seized by a powerful magnetotail, a current so strong it felt like being grabbed by a giant hand. Ivo didn't fight it. He angled into the current, letting it accelerate them while he made micro-adjustments to keep them stable. Behind him, the fleet struggled. 3 ships picked the wrong current and were immediately swept off course. 2 more tried to fight the magnetic pressure and burned out their engines. But the rest, 15 ships, managed to find their rhythm, following Ivo's lead through the chaos. "Bow shock forming ahead," Yashida called. "Big one." Ivo saw it, a compression wave building like a tsunami, tall enough to swallow their entire fleet. But there he spotted the pattern. The bow shock wasn't uniform. It had a weak point, a place where the magnetic field lines diverged slightly. "All ships adjust heading to 270. We're going through the gap." "What gap?" Captain Wren demanded. "I don't see a gap." "Trust me." They angled toward what looked like solid wall of plasma. At the last second the gap appeared, a narrow channel barely wide enough for a single ship. Ivo threaded through it, the drift's hull scraping against magnetic field lines that left glowing scars on the armor. One by one, the other ships followed. Most made it. 2 didn't. They misjudged the angle and were crushed between converging plasma walls. 13 ships left. "Krell patrol ahead," Yashida announced. 4 cruisers holding position at the Veil's inner boundary. "They're guarding the exit," Captain Oren observed. "They know we're coming." "They know someone's coming," Ivo corrected. "They don't know it's us, and they don't know we're coming through the Veil. They're probably expecting us to try the standard approach vectors." "So what do we do?" Ivo studied the tactical display, overlaying the magnetic field data. There, a braided magnetotail that flowed directly toward the Krell position, if they rode it at full speed. "We're going to ram them." "Silence on the bridge." "Not literally," Ivo clarified. "We're going to ride the magnetotail straight at them, building up as much speed as possible. At the last second, we'll break off and let the current carry us past. They'll be so focused on the frontal approach that they won't see us coming from the side." "That's insane," Yashida said. "It's sailing," Ivo replied. "Captain Wren, I need the salted wound to break off early and engage the Krell cruisers. Keep them distracted while the rest of us slip past." "You're asking me to take on 4 cruisers with 1 destroyer." "I'm asking you to annoy them for 30 seconds. Can you do that?" A pause, then. "I can annoy anyone for 30 seconds. It's a gift." The fleet accelerated, riding the magnetotail like surfers on a wave. The Krell cruisers detected them and began maneuvering, but they were too slow. They'd positioned themselves for a conventional engagement, not for enemies coming at them at .3 light speed. "Breaking off," Wren announced. The salted wound peeled away from the formation, weapons blazing. The Krell cruisers turned to engage, exactly as Ivo had predicted. The rest of the fleet shot past, riding the magnetotail's momentum. By the time the Krell realized their mistake, it was too late. The convoy was through the Veil and racing toward the supply depot. "Wren, get out of there," Ivo transmitted. "Working on it. These bastards are persistent." The salted wound dodged and weaved, taking hits, but giving as good as it got. Then it found a magnetotail of its own and rode it away from the engagement, leaving the Krell cruisers floundering in its wake. "That's what I call annoying," Wren said, breathing hard. "Marquant, remind me to buy you a drink if we survive this." "I'll hold you to that." The Krell supply depot at Theta Carini was a massive structure, a ring-shaped station 20 kilometers in diameter, bristling with weapons, and surrounded by a defensive fleet of 30 ships. "We're outnumbered 3 to 1, Captain Oren observed. 2 to 1, Ivo corrected. The salted wound is still catching up. "That doesn't improve our odds significantly." "No, but this does." Ivo highlighted a section of the tactical display. The depot is positioned at the edge of a magnetotail convergence zone. 3 major currents meet right here, creating a standing wave pattern. If we time it right, we can ride those waves straight into the depot's blind spot. Stations don't have blind spots, the Vex captain objected. This one does. Look at the sensor coverage. They've positioned their arrays to cover the standard approach vectors, but they're not accounting for ships coming in on a magnetotail. They probably think it's impossible. It is impossible, Yashida muttered. We're just too stupid to know it. Ivo grinned. Exactly, all ships form up, we're going surfing. The fleet split into 3 groups, each one positioning itself to catch a different magnetotail. Ivo led the first group, riding the strongest current straight toward the depot. The Krell defenders detected them and opened fire, but their targeting solutions were off. They couldn't compensate for the erratic movements caused by the magnetic currents. Weapons range in 30 seconds, Yashida reported. Hold fire, let them waste their ammunition. The Krell ships burned through their magazines, firing at targets that danced and weaved unpredictably. By the time the human fleet closed to weapons range, the defenders were reloading. Now, Ivo said quietly, all ships fire at will. The fleet opened up, targeting the depot's critical systems with surgical precision. Explosions blossomed across the station's hull. Secondary detonations followed as fuel stores and ammunition depots cooked off. Depot shields are down, Yashida reported. They're venting atmosphere. Boarding teams, you're up, Admiral Kess transmitted from the refuge. Secure the supplies and get out. You have 20 minutes before Krell reinforcements arrive. The next 20 minutes were chaos. Boarding teams fought through the depot's corridors, facing desperate Krell defenders who knew they were fighting for their lives. Ivo stayed on the bridge, monitoring the magnetic currents and planning their escape route. Reinforcements incoming, Yashida announced. Krell dreadnought and 10 cruisers bearing 090. How long? 18 minutes. Cutting it close, boarding team status. Supplies secured, came the reply, pulling out now. The teams retreated to their ships, dragging cargo containers filled with food, ammunition, and medical supplies. The fleet began to disengage, but the Krell defenders weren't done yet. A damaged cruiser, its engines failing, turned toward the pelagic drift on a collision course. Evasive maneuvers, Yashida shouted. But Ivo saw something else. A magnetotail, weak but present, flowing perpendicular to their current heading, if he could catch it. Hold course, he ordered. Marquant, that ship is going to ram us. No, it's not. At the last second, Ivo threw the drift into a hard turn, catching the weak magnetotail and letting it pull them sideways. The Krell cruiser shot past, missing them by meters, and slammed into one of its own ships instead. That was too close, Captain Oren said, her voice shaking. Close only counts in horseshoes and hand grenades, Ivo replied. And magnetotail navigation. All ships form up. We're leaving. The fleet regrouped and accelerated away from the depot, riding the magnetotails back toward the Crimson Veil. Behind them, the Krell reinforcements arrived to find their supply depot in ruins and the attackers already gone. Clean escape, Admiral Kess transmitted. Well done, all of you, especially you, Marquant. Your saltwater standards just won us a major victory. Ivo slumped in his chair, exhaustion finally catching up with him. Just doing my job, sir. Your job is helmsman. What you did today was art. It's science. It's both. Now get some rest. We're going to need you again soon. Word of the Theta Carini raid spread through the rebellion like wildfire. Suddenly, everyone wanted to learn Ivo's saltwater standards. Admiral Kess authorized the creation of a formal training academy, and Ivo found himself teaching classes to navigators from across the fleet. The key, he told a room full of attentive students, is to stop thinking of space as empty. It's not. It's full of currents and tides and weather patterns just like the ocean. Once you understand that, navigation becomes intuitive. A Krell student, a young officer named Throck, raised one of his four arms. But space is three-dimensional. The ocean is essentially two-dimensional. How do we adapt? Good question. The ocean is actually three-dimensional too. Currents flow at different depths, creating layers. Space is the same. Magnetotails exist at different depths in the magnetic field structure. You need to learn to read those layers and choose the right one for your needs. And how do we do that? Practice, lots of practice, and trust your instincts. Throck's granite-like face showed skepticism, but he nodded. I will try. Over the following weeks, Ivo refined his curriculum, incorporating feedback from students and adding new techniques as he discovered them. The saltwater standards evolved from a rough set of guidelines into a comprehensive navigation system, complete with mathematical formulas, practical exercises, and philosophical principles. You're building something that will outlast you, Captain Oren told him one evening as they reviewed the latest training results. These standards will change how we navigate space. That's assuming we survive long enough to use them, Ivo replied. The Krell aren't going to sit back and let us raid their supply lines forever. No, they're not. Intelligence reports indicate they're massing a fleet at Sigma Draconis, 50 dreadnoughts, 200 cruisers and support vessels. They're planning a major offensive. Ivo whistled. That's a lot of firepower. Too much for us to fight conventionally. But if we could use your navigation techniques to hit them where they're not expecting. You want to take the fight to them. I want to survive, and the best way to survive is to keep them off balance. Oren pulled up a star chart, highlighting a region of space near Sigma Draconis. There's a plasma storm here, the Shattered Reef. It's even worse than the Crimson Veil. The Krell consider it completely impassable. Which means they won't be defending the approach from that direction. Exactly. If we could navigate through the reef and hit their staging area, we'd catch them with their pants down. Ivo studied the sensor data on the Shattered Reef. It was a nightmare, multiple plasma storms overlapping, creating interference patterns that defied analysis. This is going to be tricky. Can you do it? I don't know, maybe, probably, he grinned. Let's find out. The Shattered Reef lived up to its name. Where previous plasma storms had been chaotic but navigable, the reef was pure madness. A three-dimensional maze of intersecting magnetotails, colliding bow shocks, and plasma streamers that appeared and vanished without warning. This is suicide, Yashida said flatly. Probably, Ivo agreed, but it's interesting suicide. The fleet, now grown to 30 ships thanks to recent recruits, formed up behind the pelagic drift. Ivo had hand-picked the navigators, choosing only those who'd fully embraced the saltwater standards. No room for hesitation or second-guessing in the reef. All ships, listen up, he broadcast. The reef is unlike anything we've faced before. The magnetotails here don't flow, they pulse. The bow shocks don't form predictable patterns, they cascade. And the plasma streamers are actively hostile. This is going to require every bit of skill and instinct you've developed. Encouraging speech, Captain Wren commented dryly. I'm not here to encourage, I'm here to get us through alive, maybe. They entered the reef. Immediately, the drift was seized by a pulsing magnetotail that yanked them forward, then sideways, then back, then forward again. Ivo's hands flew across the controls, making constant adjustments to keep them stable. It's like riding a bucking horse, he muttered. You've ridden horses? Yashida asked. Once, got thrown off and broke my collarbone. This is worse. Behind them, the fleet struggled. 2 ships lost control immediately and were swept away by rogue currents. 3 more collided when a bow shock appeared between them without warning. But the rest held formation, their navigators applying the saltwater standards with grim determination. 25 ships left. Cascade forming ahead, Yashida warned. Multiple bow shocks all converging. Ivo saw it, a chain reaction of compression waves, each one triggering the next, creating a wall of force that would crush anything in its path. But there, between the cascading shocks, he spotted a rhythm, a pattern. "We're going through." "Through, Marquant, that's a solid wall." "No, it's not. Watch." He highlighted the tactical display, showing how the bow's shocks pulsed in sequence. "There's a gap. It only exists for half a second, but it's there. We just need to time it perfectly." "Half a second? That's impossible." "It's sailing." Ivo accelerated, racing toward the cascade. The timing had to be perfect too early, and they'd hit the leading edge of a bow shock. Too late, and they'd be caught between two converging waves. He counted down in his head, feeling the rhythm through the haptic gloves. 3, 2, 1. Now. The drift shot through the gap, threading between bow shocks with centimeters to spare. The hull temperature spiked to 2,000 degrees. Alarms screamed, but they were through. Behind them, the rest of the fleet followed. Most made it. 4 didn't. They mistimed their approach and were crushed between the cascading shocks. 21 ships left. "This is unsustainable," Captain Oren said quietly. "We're losing too many ships." "We're almost through," Ivo replied. "I can feel it. The reef is thinning." He was right. Gradually, the chaos began to subside. The magnetotails pulsed less violently. The bow shocks formed more predictable patterns, and ahead, through the plasma haze, Ivo could see clear space. And the Krell fleet. "Contacts," Yashida reported. 50 dreadnoughts, 200 cruisers, just like intelligence said. "They're in formation, preparing to jump." "They haven't seen us yet," Ivo observed. "They're not expecting anyone to come through the reef." "Because no one should be able to come through the reef," Yashida muttered. "All ships, weapons hot," Admiral Kess transmitted from the refuge. "We're going to hit them hard and fast. Target the dreadnoughts first, take out their command structure, and the rest will fall apart." The fleet emerged from the shattered reef like sharks from murky water. The Krell fleet, caught completely off guard, scrambled to respond. But it was too late. The human ships, smaller and more maneuverable, darted between the massive dreadnoughts, targeting engines and weapon systems with surgical precision. "Dreadnought Crushing Fist is disabled," Yashida reported. "So is the Stone Breaker and the Mountain's Fury." "Keep hitting them," Kess ordered. "Don't give them time to organize." But the Krell were adapting. Their cruisers formed a defensive screen, protecting the damaged dreadnoughts while the rest of the fleet maneuvered into combat formation. The humans' initial advantage was evaporating. "We need to disengage," Captain Oren said. "We've done enough damage." "Not yet," Ivo replied. He was studying the tactical display, looking for patterns. There, a magnetotail, weak but present, flowing through the Krell formation, if they could ride it. "All ships follow my lead. We're going through them, not around them." "That's suicide," someone protested. "It's sailing, trust me." The drift accelerated, catching the magnetotail and riding it straight into the heart of the Krell formation. The enemy ships tried to intercept, but Ivo threaded between them, using the magnetic current to make impossible turns and sudden accelerations. Behind him, the fleet followed, a school of fish swimming through a forest of predators. The Krell fired desperately, but their shots went wide. They couldn't predict the erratic movements caused by the magnetotail. "Emerging on the far side," Yashida announced. "All ships accounted for." "Break for the reef," Ivo ordered, "before they can pursue." The fleet raced back toward the shattered reef, the Krell fleet in pursuit. But as they entered the plasma storm, the Krell ships hesitated. They'd seen what the reef could do. They weren't willing to follow. "They're breaking off," Yashida reported. "We're clear." Ivo slumped in his chair, every muscle aching. "How many ships did we lose?" 9. We started with 30, we're ending with 21. 70% survival rate, better than I expected. "You expected to lose more than 30% of the fleet?" Captain Oren asked, horrified. "I expected to lose everyone. The fact that we made it through at all is a miracle. Ivo closed his eyes. Or good sailing, I'm not sure there's a difference. The raid on Sigma Draconis changed everything. The Krell, who'd considered themselves invincible, suddenly found themselves vulnerable. Their supply lines were disrupted. Their staging areas were exposed, and their fleets, designed for conventional warfare, couldn't adapt to the humans' unconventional tactics. "We're winning," Admiral Kess told Ivo during a strategy session. "Not the war, not yet, but we're winning battles. We're taking territory, and it's all because of your saltwater standards." "It's not just me," Ivo protested. "Every navigator in the fleet has contributed." "But you started it. You saw patterns no one else could see. You trusted your instincts when everyone else relied on computers." Kess leaned forward. "I'm promoting you to fleet navigator. You'll coordinate all navigation operations across the rebellion." "I'm not qualified for that." "You're the only one who is qualified. Everyone else is still learning. You're the master." Ivo accepted the promotion reluctantly. He preferred being on the bridge of the drift, feeling the magnetic currents through his haptic gloves, but he understood the necessity. The rebellion needed coordination, needed someone who could see the big picture and plan operations across multiple star systems. Over the following months, he trained more navigators, refined the saltwater standards, and planned increasingly audacious raids. The Krell, desperate to stop the bleeding, began adapting their tactics. They positioned fleets near plasma storms, trying to catch the humans as they emerged. They developed new sensor arrays that could track ships through magnetic interference. They even attempted to navigate the storms themselves, with disastrous results. "They're learning," Captain Oren observed during one briefing. "Slowly, but they're learning." "Not fast enough," Ivo replied. "They're still thinking like conventional military. They're trying to control territory to establish defensive lines, but space doesn't work that way. There are no lines, no borders, just currents and tides." "So what do?" "We keep moving. We hit them where they're weak, avoid them where they're strong. We become the current, not the ship fighting against it." It was a philosophy that served them well. The rebellion grew, absorbing ships and crews from species who'd suffered under Krell domination. The fleet expanded to over 100 ships, all of them trained in the saltwater standards. And Ivo, the oceanographer who'd never expected to fight a war, found himself at the center of a movement that was reshaping the galaxy. The war came to a head at the Krell homeworld of Granite Prime. The enemy had pulled back their fleets, consolidating their forces for a final stand. 200 dreadnoughts, 1,000 cruisers, and countless support vessels surrounded the planet, creating a defensive sphere that seemed impenetrable. "We can't fight through that," Admiral Kess said, staring at the tactical display. "Even with our navigation advantages, we'd be slaughtered." "We don't fight through it," Ivo replied. "We go around it." "There is no around. They've covered every approach vector." Every conventional approach vector. Ivo highlighted a region of space near Granite Prime. "But there's this. The abyssal maelstrom. A plasma storm so massive it dwarfed everything they'd encountered before. It surrounded Granite Prime like a moat, a churning mass of magnetic chaos that extended for millions of kilometers in every direction. The Krell use it as a natural defense," Ivo explained. "They think it's impassable, and for them it is, but for us." "You think we can navigate through that?" Kess asked, incredulous. "I know we can. Look at the structure. It's not random. It's a spiral, a massive magnetic vortex centered on Granite Prime's magnetosphere. If we enter at the right point and ride the spiral inward, we can reach the planet without ever encountering the defensive fleet." "And if you're wrong?" "Then we die, but if we don't try, we lose the war. The Krell are regrouping. Give them another year and they'll be back to full strength. This is our chance." Kess studied the display for a long moment. Then he nodded. "Do it. Take the fleet through the Maelstrom, end this war." The fleet assembled at the edge of the abyssal maelstrom, 120 ships, representing a dozen species united by a common cause. Ivo stood on the bridge of the pelagic drift, his hands resting on the helm controls, feeling the magnetic currents through his haptic gloves. "This is it," he said quietly. "Everything we've learned, everything we've practiced, it all comes down to this." "No pressure," Yashida muttered. Ivo grinned. "All ships form up, we're going sailing." They entered the maelstrom. The spiral was even more powerful than Ivo had anticipated, a magnetic vortex that grabbed them and pulled them inward with irresistible force. But he'd expected that. He'd planned for it. He angled the drift to ride the spiral's edge, where the current was strongest but most stable. Behind him, the fleet followed. They'd trained for this. They knew the saltwater standards. They trusted their instincts. The spiral tightened as they descended, the magnetic pressure increasing exponentially. Ships began to fail, their shields overloading, their hulls buckling under the stress. But most held on, riding the current deeper into the maelstrom. "Granite Prime dead ahead," Yashida reported. "We're through the worst of it." Ivo didn't relax. The worst was yet to come. As they emerged from the maelstrom, they'd be vulnerable, disoriented, their systems stressed, their shields depleted, if the Krell detected them. But the Krell weren't looking inward. They were looking outward, watching for threats from conventional approach vectors. By the time they realized the human fleet had appeared in orbit around their homeworld, it was too late. "All ships engage," Admiral Kess ordered. The battle was brutal. The Krell fought with the desperation of a species facing extinction, throwing everything they had at the human fleet. But the humans had the advantage of surprise and position. They'd emerged from the maelstrom at the perfect angle, allowing them to target the planet's orbital defenses before the main fleet could respond. Ivo stayed at the helm, using the lingering magnetic currents from the maelstrom to maneuver the drift through the chaos. He dodged incoming fire, positioned the ship for optimal firing solutions, and coordinated the fleet's movements with the instinct of a sailor reading the wind. "Orbital defenses are down," Yashida reported. "The planet is exposed." "Hail them," Kess ordered. "Offer terms." The Krell leadership, faced with the destruction of their homeworld, had no choice but to surrender. The war was over. 6 months later, Ivo stood on the observation deck of the pelagic drift, watching the stars drift past. The ship was in transit to Earth, his first visit home in 5 years. He was looking forward to seeing the ocean again, feeling real water instead of magnetic currents. "You're a hero," Captain Oren said, joining him at the viewport. "They're going to throw parades for you." "I'm a sailor," Ivo replied. "I just did what sailors do, read the currents and trusted my instincts." "You changed how we navigate space. You won a war, that's more than just sailing." "Maybe, but it all started with the ocean, with understanding that water and plasma and magnetic fields all follow the same principles. Fluid dynamics, whether you're talking about the Kuroshio current or a magnetotail in the Maelstrom Tresses. The saltwater standards are being adopted across the galaxy," Oren continued. "Every species, every fleet, you've created something that will last for generations." Ivo smiled. "My grandfather would be proud. He always said the ocean teaches you everything you need to know about life. Turns out it teaches you about space navigation too." "What will you do now? The war is over. You could retire, go back to oceanography." "Maybe, or maybe I'll keep sailing. There are a lot of plasma storms out there, a lot of magnetic currents to explore. Someone needs to map them to understand them." He turned to face Oren. "Besides, I've gotten used to the view up here. The ocean is beautiful, but it doesn't have stars." "So you're staying?" "I'm staying. Someone needs to train the next generation of navigators, and someone needs to keep pushing the boundaries, finding new currents, new routes. The galaxy is a big place, plenty of room to sail." Oren's mandibles clicked in what Ivo had learned. was a Torvaldi smile. "Then I suppose we'll be sailing together for a while longer." "I suppose we will." They stood in comfortable silence, watching the stars. Somewhere out there, plasma storms raged and magnetic currents flowed, and Ivo Marquant, oceanographer-turned-helmsman, was ready to navigate them all. Because in the end, whether you were sailing water or sailing space, the principles were the same. Read the currents, trust your instincts, and never ever fight the tide. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this story, consider subscribing for more journeys. Share your thoughts in the comments and stay tuned for the next adventure.